Hey beautiful people, hope you're all well on this sunny Saturday. So I'm just coming through with an energy update, what's coming up in terms of the collective healing that is needed. Now this is, obviously it will be on an individual basis, but at the same time it is very much coming up for the entire collective. Now the amazing thing I find with doing the Sacred Earth guardianship and activation work is the gifts that the earth then gives me for that work, and it is very often a focus point for healing for the collective, for all of my clients. And last week we went to a place called Beacon Hill. So just to give you some insight, in terms of my soul mission for this year, it is the planetary DNA activations, and this is along the spine of Albion, so from the Isle of Wight, and it runs all the way up to the tip of Scotland, and there are various points. So in terms of DNA activations, just to give you an explanation of how I'm shown the DNA activations work. So everybody talks about, when I say everybody, kind of in the spiritual community, in that, about the dormant DNA activations, but what are they exactly? So how I'm shown it is that specific DNA activations will take place in the spine, or in the vertebrae of the spine. So each vertebrae in the spine accounts for a different DNA activation. Now, in terms of, and many of you, especially those who follow the work I do and have gone to different groups or Chakra Sundays, things like that I run, the Lunar Level Up, I talk very much about the cerebellum chakra. So the cerebellum chakra is the home of the shadow self. It's the home of the inner child. It's very feminine in terms of its nature. It's very much going into the shadow self, the darker side of that feminine energy, and being so incredibly accountable for all that you are, all that you do, and all that you have been. Now, cerebellum chakra, back of the head near the brainstem. And what is so amazing in the activation of this chakra, we becoming incredibly aware of the patterns and the programming and the habits that we have created through trauma response. And trauma for everybody is different. For some it can be really exceptional childhood trauma, and for others it can be what we may deem or perceive to be something really small, like an incident happens at school, and then that creates a pattern of behaviour that you then are still holding on to somewhat today. Now, at the end of the day, everyone's trauma is their trauma. There's no kind of right or wrong or big or small to how you see, feel, perceive and experience trauma. But we are accountable in our lives, especially as adults, to really view how our trauma responses are keeping us in limitation. So kind of to jump ahead to the DNA activation part, as we activate the cerebellum chakra, it opens up space for the cosmos to bring through the alignment of DNA activations that are to take hold for us in this lifetime, and they will enter through here into the vertebrae of the spine. Now, there are all different ones. For example, in the lumbar region of the spine, L1 and L2, we have yin and yang. Right at the top in the cervical spine, we have, so the highest DNA activation would be the principle of love. So there's approximately, I'd say there's approximately in between 20 and 22 DNA activations that could potentially take place. Now, for each person, it's not going to be all of those, because at the end of the day, it's too many in this lifetime. In future centuries, yes, there'll be children literally being born with these DNA activations fully online, the full lot, the full whack. But for the majority of us, the most I've seen in a person and myself would be 12 potential DNA activations to take place. Now, we also have the sacrum in the lower back, and we have the coccyx at the base of the spine. Now, when we were born, when we were children, well, definitely like when we was born, there were 33 vertebrae, and as we've got older, they fuse, some of the vertebrae fuse together. So, for example, all the vertebrae in the coccyx fuse together, so it's no longer 5 vertebrae like when we were born, and it fuses into one. The coccyx fuses into one. So in terms of the way I'm working with the planetary DNA activations, and the planetary DNA activations, they have to take place to ensure that we then as humans are able to come online with our own personal DNA activations. So we would be looking at, in terms of planetary DNA activations, we would be looking at the Albion spine as if it was that whole complete spine before it's fused together, like as we get older into childhood. So we would be looking at all 5 separated vertebrae of the coccyx. So where am I actually going with this? Right, so the coccyx is really important in terms of a DNA activation, and in terms of the positioning of the coccyx, that ran, in terms of planetary DNA activation, it runs from Isle of Wight up to St Catherine's Hill, which is in Winchester. And it's really important because, as I say, the DNA activations come cosmically through and enter whatever vertebrae they need to in the spine. But then what we need is, from the earth energy, we need a clear channel for the Kundalini energy to be able to come through, rise up. And where a lot of, I suppose, how we're told the Kundalini works and how it's pictured in books and everything, is it's like circulating around the chakra system or hitting through the chakras in some cases. And I don't see it as that. I see that the Kundalini is quite, the Kundalini energy will travel through the body quite compacted. And as the masculine and feminine energy of those Kundalini channels, it travels through the spine, hitting each vertebrae. So as it hits each vertebrae, if you have a DNA activation potentially in one of those vertebrae, the masculine and feminine energy coming together and hitting the vertebrae. I'm doing all of these like hand explanations, but I'm holding the phone with one hand so you can't even see it. But yeah, it will activate that DNA, that masculine, feminine, serpent, dragon energy coming through, hitting whatever DNA activation in the vertebrae that it's there in. It will then bring that activation through. Now, another thing in terms of the DNA activations, they are mastery. The DNA activations are mastery. So, for example, it's not a case of, oh, you're getting so as that activation begins to take place, it's not a case of, oh, you were there and you're in yin and brilliant, you've got your, no, you will be. And if anyone's had a Kundalini activation within the chakra system before, because the Kundalini does activate the chakras as well, but I suppose that's like kind of like level, you know, like if you was playing a computer game and there's different levels, that's in the first few levels. And as well, in terms of the Kundalini rising, it's not just going to do it once and that's it. No, just the same way serpent energy would shed its skin. If there's a shedding to take place, the Kundalini may hit and do whatever. And anyway, I think you see what I'm saying. So where am I going with this? So with the Kundalini, mastery. Okay, so in terms of mastery, so for example, if your activation, the first activation you're having is yin, and the Kundalini hits it to begin the activation process, that activation isn't necessarily going to come online for a good, say, 6 to 9 months is what I'm being told. Because first of all, you're only getting those DNA activations if you have done a substantial amount of work. Secondly, you are going to be pushed, bottlenecked even, to really see how out of alignment you are with the quality of yin, how out of balance, what needs to be released, what needs to be brought in. And it's only then, as that substantial amount of work is done, that you then come into like the full activation and switching on of that activation for whatever DNA activation it is. So as I've said, with this example, yin. And then you will begin this process of mastery. So then however many years even down the line, say 2-3 years down the line, you will then be like a master of that DNA energy, of the quality of yin. They are all about mastery. It's not just a case of, DNA activations and we're all having them. No. We can only have the full DNA activation if we are in full comprehension of the truth of who we are. So, going back to what's going on at the moment and the work I've been doing all week. So in terms of, we've been working with the sacrum, and the sacrum really looks at the centre of gravity. So if we are looking at the centre of gravity, we are guided, where I've now been guided to, well, first of all, when we're looking at gravity, in terms of just on a scientific level, it is gravity, the laws of gravity. Something of a bigger mass is going to kind of draw you towards it. So obviously the mass of Earth is bigger than us. We're drawn to the Earth. Gravity keeps us here on Earth. On a spiritual level, I suppose the mass of a higher consciousness draws us to it, attracts us to it. But as well, it's about bringing through our energy so that it is so clear and concise that the cosmos can read it, decipher it, and bring through whatever it is that we wish to bring through. So, where I've now been guided to with this, I suppose on a collective level, for a DNA activation of the planetary sacrum to take place, and that coding for the centre of gravity beyond a physical level to really begin to take hold and make a massive shift in terms of planetary consciousness, human consciousness, is that we need to have been shown that the parasympathetic nervous system is basically in failure. So what is the parasympathetic nervous system? I'm going to explain first what the sympathetic nervous system is. The sympathetic nervous system, it deals with fight or flight. We know that that energy of fight or flight, the frequency of fight or flight kicks in when we sense that we are in danger. Now, take away the obvious from that. If we are looking at how we live our lives, and this is from childhood, we wake up to the alarm, and then we go out to school all day and we're working. For those of us with parents or as parents who can afford it, we are then putting our children in this after school activity and that club, and non-stop. So this is from childhood, and not resting. So we see this energy, it's the survival energy. The sympathetic nervous system has us in this survival energy, and we're looking at being in this survival energy for thousands of years, even though those of us on this planet who are doing really well. That energy of wanting to succeed, that energy of wanting more, of having to do better, that too is the sympathetic nervous system being in overdrive, being in this survival mode. So what we're seeing is really and truly the majority, even so many of our, where maybe 300, 400, 500 years ago, the indigenous were not living in that survival mode. They are now, like, if you think in the Amazon, the rainforests are being cut down illegally, and just like the way people ripped from their land, told that their language is wrong and they should speak English and whatever, they've been put into survival mode. So we're really looking at, on a planetary level, all of humanity running for centuries, for millennia, on survival mode, with the sympathetic nervous system ruling the energy. Now, I'm being shown that the parasympathetic nervous system needs a reset. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system, it deals with rest and digestion. If we're looking at rest, what it's going to do is it's going to slow down the heart rate. It's going to enable us to breathe properly. Stop for whatever you're doing right now and really focus on your breath. Are you breathing properly? And I know for the majority of you, the answer is going to be no. So, in terms of digestion, one of the things that the parasympathetic nervous system deals with is salivation. So the saliva we produces enzymes which help break down our food to make it easier to digest. If the food's easier to digest, that's going to follow its way then down to the small intestines to be sorted into what's right, what's not, what's toxic, what do we need to, what nutritious content needs to be absorbed by the body. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system also deals with excretion and urination, and also lacrimation, which is the production of tears. Those three aspects are all about release. Those are three things to do with release. Now, I'm being shown that our parasympathetic nervous system, individually and as a collective, literally whole world, it needs a complete reset. The reason being, well, is because we need to get into rest mode. But once this is reset, that channel of energy that goes up, it will not be short-circuiting. That channel of energy that goes up to the cosmos, to the universe, to be read, it won't be distorted, it won't be short-circuiting. At the moment, there are too many of us sending out distorted frequencies that the universe can't comprehend, that the universe can't read. We are also not hearing, seeing, feeling, reading the frequency coming in, the new frequencies coming in from the cosmos and the universe and the earth even. So because we're not able to do that, again, because we're running on these sympathetic survival nervous systems, so this is the purpose of it, so that and you've probably seen pictures of kind of like auric fields and with lines going up, these golden lines going up to the universe. It's essential, it's absolutely essential. And can you imagine if the whole entire planet was running on a clear, concise, healed, pure parasympathetic nervous system? What would be going up into the collective consciousness would be clear, concise energy that's being read, and we would be able to receive the light codes, the messages. Our connection to the earth would be greater. We need to be able to understand how the earth works, and we can't, because we are too heavily in fight or flight or survival instinct, not even instinct, frequency. Also, what I'm being guided to say is, in terms of the parasympathetic nervous system dealing with digestion, we're led to the solar plexus, we're led to gut instincts. If there's issue there, it's always going to hamper our gut instincts. We're going to be in this wall of separation of self-doubt and lack of trust. So and I'll be honest with you, I could literally relate the failure of the parasympathetic nervous system to every single wall of separation there is. But I don't want to go on forever. So yeah, this is what's going on. I've done the work on myself. Oh my gosh, I feel so much clearer. Now, just in terms of how I do this work. So I work very much how I work anyway, and I work a bit like a mapping system on the body, but for absolutely everybody, it's going to come up differently. So what I will be shown is from what chakra, or it may not even be a chakra, it may be from your hara line. If it's your hara line, it's from when you was in the womb, and you may have literally been born with a failed parasympathetic nervous system, depending on what mum experienced while she was carrying you. It may be that the failure of the parasympathetic nervous system happened in one of the auric fields, and this could have occurred during a trauma. So I'm basically shown whether the failure of the parasympathetic nervous system occurred in either the hara line, an auric field, or in a particular chakra. If it happened in a chakra, I will be guided to what chakra it's occurred in. I will then be given a time period. Now, I look at, when I'm doing healing work, I look at everybody in 7-year layers, 0 to 7 years old, 7 to 14, and so on. So it will be pinpointed exactly what age period that the failure happened. And then I will be guided, if it is in the chakra system, I will then be guided to what meridian it links to, and the meridian then will guide us to different emotional issues and things like that. So for example, with myself, mine started in the heart. It was during the period of 14 to 21 years, and I know with absolute clarity that it was during this time period that, in terms of what my life path was, I made a lot of decisions and indecisions that really took me off where I was meant to be doing, where I was meant to be going, what I was meant to be doing, and that is what then set my parasympathetic nervous system into this failure energy. And alongside that, it was the stomach meridian. And interestingly, if anything kind of goes down with the stomach meridian, it can then affect many other organs and general well-being. So stomach majorly affecting my decision making, and this is where I then stepped into this energy of not being able to make a decision, of being really indecisive, of not trusting the decisions I was making. And that's so really, really interesting energy for me as a healer to be working with. And literally, if any of my clients are watching this and you haven't come to me this week, but you're booked in for the next, say, anytime between now and the next 6-7 weeks, this is what we're doing. We're going to be resetting your parasympathetic nervous system. And it's needed, it is necessary. If you'd like to find out more, you can contact me on Instagram or via my website, and links will be in wherever I'm posting this, in whatever description box there is. But yes, sending you all an abundant amount of love, healing light, and get out there, get those light codes in from the sun, those plasma codes, and connect to the earth. Absolutely vital. And rest. We don't have to. We're out here doing the most. It's too much. It's too much. it is not going to serve. Basically, the ascension process cannot happen if we continue to live our lives in exactly the same way that we have done over the past however many years in this crazy energy of survival. It is time for us to become sustainable and create practices that really maintain a beautiful, blissful sense of well-being, ease and flow in our lives. Abundant love to you all. I will speak to you soon.